Hey y'all, it's Kim. So this will be video two of the hearing to dismiss all indictments against Jeffrey Epstein. This is from 2019, about 2 weeks after he died, when they decided to go through with this case still. I think they've got some victims probably that are going to be speaking as well, but we'll just read through this one. But we're on page 19, and there's only 86 pages of this one. But here it is. The court is just so it is clear. So your view on the motion directly on its merits of the nolle prosecute, I don't know, order and uh, application by the U.S. attorney. Do you have a view on that, Mr. Weingarten, which is Jeffrey Epstein's attorney? I think if the court felt that the case had to stay alive for the court to continue, we would oppose it, I think. The court, I'm sorry, if what? Mr. Weingarten, if you took the position for you to conduct the investigation or lead the investigation or participate in the investigation, then we want the role we want you to play. If the indictment had to be alive, we would oppose the motion. I don't think you need to do that. I think you can dismiss the indictment. The court. So you're suggesting that you support the government's motion just viewed in the context of Mr. Weingarten? Yes, of course. The court, great. Mr. Weinberg, Judge, if I can just supplement the court, absolutely. Mr. Weinberg, thank you, sir. Thank you as an out of town lawyer for the privilege to appear in front of you, Your Honor. The court, it's my pleasure. Mr. Weinberg, first, as to the conditions, we think Your Honor trusted the government, the Bureau of Prisons, to keep our client safe, keep him in civilized conditions. The government will again ask, as to other defendants, that they be detained at the MCC. Some subset of them will end up in the SHU unit or special housing unit. It is horrific. I've called it medieval. There's vermin on the floor. There's wet from the plumbing. There's no sunlight. There's limited exercise. It is simply conditions that no pretrial detainee, and I will go further, as a criminal defense lawyer, no United States defendant should be subjected to. Certain judges have taken views of the conditions. We would urge Your Honor, the government talks about, and we talk about transparency to see what kind of conditions there exist within 50 or 100 yards of one of the great United States district courts. Second, in terms, we have a profound problem with the conclusion of the medical examiner. There are for three reasons, Your Honor. One is the timing of Mr. Epstein's demise. It was on August 10th. On August 12th, a bail pending appeal motion was being filed in the second circuit. On August 12th or 13th, the United States attorneys were going to respond to our request for the preservation and production of documents that would have facilitated and furthered our efforts to demonstrate communications between the Southern District of Florida, the Northern District of Georgia, which was standing in the shoes of the Southern District of Florida, Main Justice, and the Southern District. In other words, we were beginning the process discharging our responsibilities. There had been no new evidence that Mr. Epstein had committed any offense against a minor after 2005. The subject matter of the New York prosecution was squarely within the heartland of the Florida NPA, or non-prosecution agreement. We had a significant motion to dismiss. This was not a futile, defeatist attitude. Third, we had all the discovery motions that Your Honor had scheduled. So the timing for the pretrial detainee to commit suicide on August 10th, when his bail pending appeal motion is being filed on August 12th, strikes us as implausible. Second, we had an independent doctor who was present at the autopsy, which occurred on August 11th. On August 11th, the city medical examiner's findings were inconclusive. We were told by a very experienced forensic pathologist that the broken bones in Mr. Epstein's neck and his larynx are more consistent with external pressure, with strangulation, with homicide, if you will, than with suicide. It doesn't exclude suicide, but the pure medical forensic evidence creates profound issues about what happened to him. Also, the time of death. Our medical examiner's opinion is it occurred at least 45 minutes and probably hours before 6:30 a.m. on August 10th when he was first found, if you will, according to the reports. Yet he has moved something that or yet he was moved, something that is not ordinary in these circumstances. I would also, the court, excuse me, he was moved. Mr. Weinberg, instead of having the cell in the condition it was found, if he had been dead for 45 minutes or 2 hours or 4 hours, there were efforts to move him and therefore make it more difficult to reconstruct whether or not he died of suicide or some other cause. I spoke to Stacy Richmond, who is a responsible member a responsible member of this court who represents the family of Mr. Epstein. She spoke to the medical examiner on Friday after Mr. Epstein's death and asked why, if the conclusion was made late in the afternoon on Friday that week. She specifically asked about what extrinsic non medical evidence caused the medical examiner to go from uncertain to suicide, and she was told that the medical examiner had seen 9 minutes of one video, which was on a stairwell between floors at the MCC. She was told that the principal video that would have showed the whole hall was corrupted. It was in DC with the FBI to see if they can reconstruct it. And I asked the same question that my co counsel did, was the dysfunction of the critical pivotal video in the most secure prison east of Florence out in Colorado known to the MCC before August 10th, or was this corruption occurring on August 10th, which would again cause us to be skeptical of the certitude of the medical examiner's conclusions that this was suicide rather than some other cause. So, with my co counsel, we ask you, Honor, it is not a question of trust or not trust. They ask you to detain people and you trust the Bureau of Prisons. And it is within your inherent authority, Your Honor, to find out what happened to our client. We're angry about the conditions he was held in. And we're also angry, quite frankly, Your Honor, that the only source of information that we get as to what happened to him is through the media rather than through the United States Attorney's Office. We've made requests informal. We have made 2 requests. We've been told there is a pending investigation, but we trust Your Honor in the judiciary, and with all due respect, we believe there is an inherent and central role, a pivotal role in Your Honor to find out what happened to a defendant in a case before the courts. Whether or not the court grants the noli pros today or whether it holds its pending an investigation in Mr. Epstein's death. We're not here without significant doubts regarding the conclusion of suicide. We're not here to say what happened. We don't know what happened, but we deeply want to know what happened to our client. And thank you, sir. The court and you, as Mr. Weingarten, have the same view as the noli prosequi, whatever motion. Mr. Weinberg, yes, Your Honor. The court, okay. Ms. Comey, Your Honor, may I respond to some of those points? The court, sure. Ms. Comey, thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, with the exception of the noting that the defense does not have an objection to the government's motion, virtually everything else that defense counsel just argued respectfully is completely irrelevant to the purposes of today's proceeding and to the motion that is pending before Your Honor. As an initial matter, the question, the court, well, it may be. Well, I don't know. You say irrelevant. It is a public hearing, and I think it is fair game for defense counsel to raise its concerns. Ms. Comey, certainly, Your Honor, but it is irrelevant to whether or not the motion should be granted. The court, right, I get that. Ms. Comey, I would also note that the question of Mr. Epstein's death is the subject of an ongoing and active investigation, as has been publicly noted by a separate team of assistant United States attorneys from the Southern District of New York, separate from the team who is handling this prosecution, as well as a separate team of FBI agents. There is an ongoing and active grand jury investigation into the circumstances surrounding Mr. Epstein's death. It is a function of a grand jury in the Federal Bureau of Investigation to investigate crimes in the federal court system. It is not the purview, respectfully, of the court to conduct an investigation into uncharged matters. So, respectfully, we disagree with the defense counsel's suggestion that the court has some authority to conduct an independent investigation. To the extent any other defendants who are detained in the MCC have concerns about the conditions or believe that the conditions are relevant to a future or current bail determination, it is for those defendants and their counsel to raise those arguments and for the judges hearing those arguments to evaluate those claims. It is not relevant to today's proceeding. Thank you, Your Honor. The court, in those other cases, Ms. Comey, judges do have authority to investigate, but don't hear. Ms. Comey, not to investigate, Your Honor, but to hear arguments about the conditions of confinement in the MCC as they may relate to any bail determination. I believe that was the argument that was made. The bigger picture here, Your Honor, is that the focus of today's proceeding, as we understand it, is to allow the victims who have gathered here today to be heard and to comment upon the case and to comment upon the motion that is pending and to bring this case to a close. The court got it. Mr. Weingarten, may I? The court, sure. Mr. Weingarten, we obviously saw this as perhaps the last opportunity to be before you, and we wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to say our piece, and thank you for allowing us. There is precedent here. Ted Stevens, the senator from Alaska, came in Washington, D.C. Judge Emmett Sullivan ordered an independent investigation by a private lawyer when he was deeply troubled by the alleged Brady violations. I represented the prosecutors in that case, so I'm very, very familiar with it. It is analogous. It is a situation where there was tremendous controversy over what happened in the case and whether or not the prosecutors went off the reservation. Sullivan, and there were 3 or 4 DOJ inquiries into the very same matter. But Judge Sullivan wanted his own opportunity to make a judgment with his own independent investigation. The court, okay. Mr. Weinberg, if I could just add one precedent, Your Honor. The chief judge in the District of Massachusetts, or the chief judge at the time, Judge Wolf, in a case called U.S. versus Fleming, when the conditions at Walpole, which is a state prison where federal prisoners were being held, we don't have a federal MCC in Boston, went to the prison, stayed in the prison to determine whether or not the complaints about the conditions were authentic. I think Your Honor has the inherent authority to go to the 9th floor and see how the MCC houses pretrial detainees. Thank you. The court. Are you saying that whether or not the motion is granted, that is pending before us? Mr. Weinberg? Yes, Your Honor. I think, like when appeals are taken, bail issues remain before the district court. Jurisdiction is not completely divested. Your Honor issued a pretrial detention order, and Your Honor has the power, the inherent authority. They are not going to refuse to allow you to go look at the 9th floor. They're going to count on you to make decisions in the future. I just trust that the executive branch is not going to prevent the judicial branch from looking into the death of Jeffrey Epstein or the conditions in the SHU unit at the MCC, sir. The court, great, thank you. Ms. Comey, may I, Your Honor? Just very briefly, Your Honor, I would note that upon the dismissal of the indictment, which I believe the parties agree is appropriate in this case, there would be no case. There would be no jurisdiction for the court to conduct any sort of inquiry, even if the court had such authority. The court, right. Okay, I think we've heard enough. It is at this point in the hearing that I would like to call upon victims' counsel, plural, for any remarks that they may have and they wish to make. Also to introduce their clients, those of them who wish to be heard. It would be helpful if, in doing that, if counsel, Mr. Edwards, and I see Mr. Boyce yeah, I guess it is Boyce as well. I knew I know they are counsel to at least several of the victims. It would be helpful if whoever is speaking, both Mr. Edwards and Mr. Boyce, would indicate to the court whether or not they have discussed the pending motion with their clients, that is to say, and the rule of abatement, et cetera, with them prior to today's hearing. Are we going to hear from Mr. Edwards first? Is that right? Mr. Edwards, thank you, Your Honor. The court, you bet. It would be helpful, Mr. Edwards, if you would state and spell your name for the court reporter. If you're going to introduce someone else, which I trust that you are, if you could state and spell their name as well. Mr. Edwards, yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, Brad Edwards, BradEdwards, with the law firm of Edwards Pottinger. I have in the courtroom today 15 victims that I represent and have represented over the years. There are at least 20 more who didn't make this hearing today for a multitude of reasons, some out of fear of public exposure, others because the way in which this case ended will never bring full justice, and they decided it was best for them not to talk today. Some of my clients are going to address the court that are here today, others are not. Some are going to use their names and have in the past, and others wish to remain anonymous. And I have instructed each of them to inform the court reporter that they will be proceeding as Jane Doe so that the court reporter can take them down. The court, for those who wish to remain anonymous, Mr. Edwards, exactly, Your Honor. The court this is satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Edwards, before we do that, I would like to address a couple of things that have occurred this morning. First of all, whether relevant or not, I personally and on behalf of my clients do appreciate the presentation that Mr. Weingarten made and Mr. Marty Weinberg made. I have tremendous respect for Mr. Weinberg. I've worked with him through this and related cases for years, and I understand the reason why they made the presentation that they made. There is two things of interest to our clients in that respect. One is because of the tragic ending that none of my clients wanted, nor did I, nor did anyone else. If there's some civil rights violation and there is some civil remedy for Mr. Epstein that goes to the estate, certainly the victims are interested in that, as they might help to repair the damage done. Second, Mr. Epstein's untimely death, the timing is curious to us, but more so, it makes it absolutely impossible for the victims to ever get the day in court that they wanted in court and to get full justice. That now can never happen. I know that Mr. Epstein's attorneys say he wanted it, and they know we did too. And there are a lot of people here today that are very sad by the way that this ended for both Mr. Epstein and the fact that full justice was robbed from them once again. The second issue I wanted to address was the law review or the law journal article that Your Honor referenced, which is troubling because the opinion seems to say that transparency is not appropriate in the criminal system and is not appropriate at this time or this point in time. That's tough to swallow, especially in this case, given the long history of this case. Personally, it is tough to swallow, and on behalf of my clients, I can say that it is very concerning. Transparency is the only way that the justice system works. We know this because there was a similar investigation of Mr. Epstein many years ago from 2005 to 2008. My personal involvement in this case was because of a young female came into my office named Courtney Wild, and she came to me not asking to file a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein, but simply asking for the government to talk to her. She was cooperating in an FBI investigation and wanted the government to speak with her, and I thought that was going to be an easy task. It was only a few months later that we learned that this investigation that was represented to my client in written form, that it would be a long investigation and to be patient, basically to hang tight. It was resolved by way of a secret deal that never allowed any of the more than 30 victims who have been identified of Mr. Epstein's abuse in Florida to ever participate in a single hearing. There was a hearing, they were not notified. I then went on to represent many of them in civil cases and also in extensive pro bono work. And I can tell Your Honor that while Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of them hurt them and harmed them for many years, the feelings they had was aggravated exponentially by the facts that they had no rights in the criminal justice system, by the fact that they were treated as if they didn't matter. They were not allowed their rights under the Crime Victims' Rights Act to meaningfully confer with prosecutors, to be treated with fairness, to be treated with dignity. That is what this is supposed to be about, and to have notice of hearings. So I do want to thank Your Honor, and especially the prosecutors who have worked this investigation and this case, which is very different in experience for all of my clients and the other Epstein victims in this case, because they were allowed to be a part of the process. While some of them elected not to be here today, that opportunity should always be allowed for them. In 2008, we filed that case under the Crime Victims' Rights Act because our clients' rights were violated. And as Your Honor knows, a federal judge has ruled in our clients' favor with their rights, or that their rights were violated. So this hearing today means a lot to them. The fact that they may never get their chance to speak in court, they may never get complete closure, and all of us have to wonder if their rights had been afforded them the first time, would any of us be here right now? Or wouldn't it more likely be the case that everyone, including Jeffrey Epstein, would have turned out better for it? Today, I have not only represented but met and became very close with many of these victims, many of these survivors. They are very strong people, and they are people who have persevered through a lot of adversity. It's been a roller coaster of emotion that has led us to where we are today. And while they have all been cast over the years because of the secrecy of the first investigation and the shadow as victims, you can't put them all in one bucket and say one size fits all. They are each individual people who were harmed differently and distinctly through not only the abuse but the system. And on behalf of all of them, I would like to thank Your Honor for the fairness with which they've been treated, and the United States Attorney's Office for the way in which you've handled this investigation, and especially how you treated the victims in this case. Like I said, I have many who want to speak, some that can't. This is very difficult for them, but we appreciate the opportunity and the invitation. The first client that I have that is going to address Your Honor is the one who walked into my office in 2008 asking just to be heard, Courtney Wild. The court, hold on one second. Did you all want to be seated? You don't need to be standing. Whatever is more comfortable until you're ready to give some comments. It's up to you. Miss Wild, if you could spell your name for the court reporters, please. Miss Wild, Courtney, Courntney. Last name Wild, or Wild, Wild. Continue on next page. Miss Wild, my name is Courtney Wild, and I'm a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused me for years, robbing me of my innocence and mental health. Jeffrey Epstein has done nothing but manipulate our justice system, where he's never been held accountable for his actions, even to this day. Jeffrey Epstein robbed myself and all the other victims of our day in court to confront him one by one, and for that, he is a coward. I want to thank the U.S. attorneys for seeking justice that has been long overdue, and most importantly, giving us, the victims, our day in court to speak our piece and find some sort of closure. I feel very angry and sad that justice has never been served in this case. Thank you. The court, thanks very much. Mr. Edwards, I believe my next client who was going to speak is probably going to speak as Jane Doe. Jane Doe number one. Yes, Jane Doe. The court will say Jane Doe number one, just for the record. Jane Doe number one. Okay. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I've shifted what I want to say in hearing what's already been said and just about the question of Epstein or Jeffrey's death. I don't know what the relevance is to this hearing, but I do know that it is profoundly relevant to my life as a victim. I don't like that word, but I still feel like I am learning the ways that he's impacted me as a complex situation. But he was also a major part of my life. As destructive as that relationship was, and as much as a villain as we have created him to be, based on facts, we've created him to be a villain. He's a complex villain, and actually, all of this is irrelevant. Anybody deserves an investigation is the right thing to do. Like, we need to know how he died. It felt like a whole new trauma all over again, and I don't know why, because I'm trying to defend myself against him at this point in my life, but it still does not feel good. It didn't feel good to wake up that morning and find out that he had allegedly committed suicide, okay? But I also wanted to say to the press, I read my story in the paper. I read so many other girls' stories that are so similar to my own, and everything that's been focused on is not the most important part of it. There was the problem was with focusing on the facts of the situation that were out of the ordinary, and like, because he was such a grand person and it was just a unique situation. I know that that's the more interesting side of the story, but I don't want to be used as entertainment. And the fundamental problem of the whole situation is the element of exploitation and coercion. And these are the things that so many girls can relate to. And even though this Jeffrey Epstein brought it to a grand scale on some level, a lot of girls could relate to the trauma that we were talking about. And even though this whole situation sucks, I would like to think that it may be possibly a catalyst for change, because obviously, as we're seeing with the Me Too movement, change needs to happen. And it's what I'm seeing in the papers is not a common story, but it's so much more common than you realize. That's all. Thank you. The court, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, I believe that the next client is going to also be Jane Doe. So I think for the purpose of the record, it will be Jane Doe number two. The court, yes. Jane Doe number two, good morning, Your Honor. The court, good morning. How are you? Jane Doe number two, doing okay. I hadn't prepared any words to speak today, but there is something that was on my mind this morning when I got here. It's been on my mind in reading through the press and through the people that I've spoken to about it, friends, family. It's something that's bothered me because I think it has a lot of blame in it as well. A little bit of what my friend who was up here was speaking about. I think that a lot of people ask why we spent so much time or why we stayed. It's an experience that's really hard to explain to people who haven't gone through it. I think there's a writer, Thomas Nagel, who wrote an essay called What Is It Like to Be a Bat? And I think that he touches on it pretty strongly. And if you haven't experienced something, it's very hard to fully understand why someone makes the decisions they do and what the circumstances were. I don't want to speak for all of the victims. I think each of us has a different story and different circumstances for why we stayed in it. But for me, I think he was really strategic in how he approached each of us. Things happened slowly over time. We didn't, it almost was like putting it like that analogy of a frog being in a pan of water and slowly turning the flame up. You didn't realize it was happening, and I don't think anyone can fully understand the experience, but the blame feels very strong. There's a lot of support as well, but I just want people to try and understand that we aren't bad people. We weren't trying to, it wasn't a situation where we were trying to extort money from someone. A lot of us were in very vulnerable situations and extreme poverty circumstances where we didn't have anyone on our side to speak on our behalf, and that's really scary. You start to blame yourself because at first you don't tell anyone what's happening, and it becomes your deep, dark secret that you try to keep from everyone. And I didn't even know I was a victim until I spoke with my lawyers. I had no idea. I had so much self hatred and doubt and just guilt for everything. I still do. I still don't feel like I deserve to say I'm a victim. And I think that's a big problem with our society right now, that people are still blaming victims. And I think that does need to change. I hope that today people understand that each of us has a story, has a past, has a family, and just give us a chance to, that's basically all I just wanted to say. The court, thank you very much. Jane Doe number two, thank you so much. The court, okay. Mr. Edwards, okay. I think that the next person is going to speak is also going to be speaking as Jane Doe. So for the purpose of the record, Jane Doe number three. Jane Doe number three, thank you for allowing us to speak today. I came to New York City 15 years ago to pursue modeling from a small town. I signed on with an agency and was excited to pursue my passion and my dream. Several months later, I met a female who told me about Mr. Epstein. She portrayed him as an amazing man who genuinely cared for people and that he was going to be able to help me in a modeling career. I was excited to meet him. After hearing her talk about him, he sounded like an amazing person. An introduction was made at his New York home, and it is there that I was sexually assaulted. I left his home after he threw me, basically put money on the table, and I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. This was not the way I was brought up, and I couldn't believe this had happened to me. I left, and my world kind of spiraled after that. I stopped going on modeling castings. I gained weight. I became depressed. I stopped going out with my friends, and only 5 months after I had been in New York City to pursue my dream, I left. I left the modeling industry and I left New York City, and I totally switched my career paths. I buried this deep within me, and all of the new occurrences that have come up in the media is what up, brought it back up for me. And I feel sickened and saddened that it took so many years and God knows how many victims for this to finally come out. But I'm thankful it did, and I'm just angry that he's not alive anymore to have to pay the price for his actions. So I thank you for your time. In the court, you're very welcome. Mr. Edwards, Your Honor, Jane Doe number four, I believe, is going to speak now. Jane Doe number four, good morning, Your Honor. The court, excuse me, good morning. Jane Doe number four, I just have something very short to say. I met Jeffrey Epstein at a very vulnerable place in my life, and whatever the outcome is with everything, I just wanted to express that we, the victims, we will always carry irreparable damage and pain throughout our lives after this. It's something that's never going to go away. Whoever we marry in our life, whatever future we have in our life, it's always going to be something that's always there for us. And I'm very nervous right now. And Jeffrey Epstein, he took away the chance I had at having the future I'd envisioned for myself as a young girl. And I think many of us here today will never fully heal from that pain and the heartache that we'll continue carrying with us. So I just wanted to say that it's something that's it's irreparable. I can't even really use a better word to describe it. So thank you for hearing us today. In the court, you're very welcome. Mr. Edwards, Your Honor, Jane Doe number five would like to speak, and we'll probably finish up with her and then do a separate one. Jane Doe number five, this is the letter that I wrote, so it's going to be, Dear Jeffrey, I think you are a mentally disturbed human being. You used your power to make me believe at a young age that I could have my dreams of being a model. You paid for your freedom. You violated my rights. You should have to pay for them, just as anyone else. You got a plea deal that no one else would have been able to get. You used your money to get out of paying the price for your victims or for your actions. Also, as a victim, I never got to see what the agreement was or why the special treatment got approved. I think you should have been in jail for several years in population and live like everyone else that is mentally disturbed like you. You paid for yourself to get a special treatment while you were in jail. I don't even think you spent a day in jail as a normal human being. You had investigators come to my house and also went to my friend's house to question them. I will never be able to get over the overwhelming emotions and embarrassment I experienced from the trauma. I needed therapy several times a week and had high stress and anxiety levels. You paid your way to make the public think that the girls had nothing in life going on for them. You wanted to try and blame that we were lower class and that was the problem with the girls. I was from a middle class family and did well in school. I lived the American girl dream or the American girl life. I went on family vacations around the world, grew up in a good city, and my parents are still married to this day. Basically, everything you said that we didn't have in our life, I did. It all came down to I was told I was making $200 in an hour. Being young, that was a lot of money, and I didn't know any better. Sadly, you were the one with an illness that you should have to go and see a doctor and also have a mentor group for the sickness you have. I will continue with writing my book about the secret life with all the newspaper articles of the case, my high school agenda book of official dates. I'm basing that proof that I deposited cash after leaving Jeffries. I still have all the information, articles that I collected over the years. You mentally and physically traumatized me. I went to therapy and it was the best thing I did for myself. If anyone only learns one thing from this case, I hope is that money should not let you buy your way free. A crime is a crime and a victim is a victim. Thank you. In the court, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, Your Honor, my next client is Shantae Davies. Shantae Davies, anyway, she spelled her name Chauntae, whatever, and the Davies. Miss Davies, I met Jeffrey Epstein through my first massage teacher, a man who took me in as his apprentice to teach me a practice I wanted to learn while in desperate search to find a cure for a debilitating neurological disorder that I have, which manifests into violent vomiting attacks, largely triggered by stress. It's called cyclic vomiting syndrome. I was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell upon my first meeting of her. I wouldn't know I had been recruited until many years later when I would read it in a headline. Ghislaine and Jeffrey took me in. They sent me to school. They gave me a job. They flew me around the world, introduced me to a world I had only dreamt of, and made me feel as though I had become a part of their family. Another thing I was desperately searching for. But on my third or fourth time meeting them, they brought me to Jeffrey's Island for the first time. And on the first night there, Sarah Kalin came tapping on my door late at night to inform me Jeffrey was ready for another massage. My instincts told me this didn't feel right, but I got up and followed her to a villa I hadn't yet seen, Jeffrey and Ghislaine's villa. I began my massage, trying not to let him smell my fear and obvious discomfort, but before I knew what was happening, he grabbed onto my wrist and tugged me towards the bed. I tried to pull away, but he was unbuttoning my shorts and pulling my body onto his already naked body faster than I could think. I was searching for words, but all I could say was meek, no, please stop. But that just seemed to excite him more. He continued to rape me, and when he was finished, he hopped off and went to the shower. I pulled my shorts up and I ran as fast as I could back to my own villa, my feet bloodied from the rocks. I cried myself to sleep that night. I spent 2 weeks vomiting almost to death in a Los Angeles hospital after the first encounter. Jeffrey's abuse would continue for the next 3 years, and I allowed it to continue because I had been taken advantage of my entire life and been conditioned to just accept it. It took me a long time to come forward, too long maybe, and all that it took to bring this man to justice has been robbed by his death. Every day, every week I spent in the hospital since I've suffered and he has won. Every job offer that's been offered to me and then retracted because of my connection to this case, I have suffered and he has won. Every public humiliation I've endured, I have suffered and he has won. Every relationship that I've had to end because of the abuse that I have endured by the hands of this man, I have suffered and he has won. Every woman sitting in this room today and all of the women who have yet to come forward and who have not yet to come forward, and those lives have been affected by Jeffrey Epstein's sick abuse of young girls. We've all suffered, and he's still winning in death. I refuse to let this man win in death. I couldn't fight back when Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused me because I hadn't yet found my voice. Well, I've found my voice now, and while Jeffrey may no longer be here to hear it, I will not stop fighting and will not be silenced anymore. I needed him to hear the pain he's caused, what I've gone through because of him. I wrote a 350-page book of all the pain that I've endured at the hands of this man that I really needed him to hear. His death has robbed me of that justice. Please don't rob us of justice again. Thank you. And then the court, thank you. So I'm going to stop it here just so it doesn't cut off on me. But anyway, this is kind of interesting to hear from the victims. Anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.